Martin, Senior Management Engagement and Optimization. Our topic for today is the OneView provider experience, the provider portal. And I thought I'd just take a minute or two to share with you what the background is, or background was, around how the platform came to be. So the actually history of the platform was it was created primarily by our president and CEO, Kirk Heath, and a few other providers, along with some of our key IT people out of the San Francisco area. And it really came from frustration from the provider perspective around how often they had to provide their same credentialing data repetitively across different types of organizations, whether it be for their own private practice or whether it would be for hospitals or ASCs. So as providers started to being credentialed more and more over different types of organizations, they found the need to keep producing that same data repetitively, again, as I mentioned, over and over again. So the original creation of the platform was really designed for providers and really how to ease that process around, again, getting their data to different organizations. So what you see today is really, again, the original design, which is a provider portal. And what came from that, obviously, simultaneously, was the need to manage credentials from the actual credentialing team, business side of the industry. All right. So we have an hour today scheduled. Take a look at the platform. So it probably won't take us an hour to go through the full provider experience, but we will have time for questions and answers. And on the call with me today as well is Yasi. And Yasi's been on our call before, and she'll be supporting us through any questions that come in, both through the Q&A area as well as the live chat. Right, so again, on my screen today, you're seeing the basic login for a provider. And I'm going to log in as Kirk Heath today, who is our president and CEO. And Kirk, again, is the practicing surgeon and does use the platform to manage his own credentials as well. Right, so if you're a coordinator in the system today, you understand when you come in that you see, the full breadth of the platform with all features and functionality, and you see all teams you have membership to, and of course with each team there's a provider roster. So you may be seeing anything from 5 to thousands of different provider credentials. When the provider comes in, what you're seeing here is a true dashboard. So again, they come in from a portal perspective. It is a profile for just their individual information. And again, it's a much simpler view than you and I see as coordinators. The provider has a similar capacity, though, to manage their credentials. So similar across the top. Again, there are top navigation bars like ours when we come in as a coordinator. It's related to the provider who's logged in. Again, the same information here around the ability to sign out. The blue navigation bar, again, for them would be related to their dashboard. We'll go into each area here. We'll see a couple of items like My Jobs that you don't see, your providers will not see. Part of the Modio division line is actually a recruitment firm. So you see here, we've got Kirk matching up for some jobs. Again, excuse me, typically that's not something your providers will be seeing. Again, same with time and expense. That's an optional module that's actually available. Most customers are not using that for their providers, but then you will not see that, nor will your providers see it when they log in. But the logins will be familiar, and those are logins that you see inside your coordinator login as well. And the task feature, again, is that third-party email system built into the platform that can also be used to communicate with your providers, and again, CME. So coming back to the dashboard for a minute, again, this is showing you this is the provider that's logged in. We're seeing Kirk's actual NPI number, the picture, again, that's actually attached to his credentialing record and the teams he has membership to. His specialty with the gold star, familiar to all of us, that's his primary specialty. We're seeing his state licenses with expiration dates as well as his primary practice, professional school, and DEA. And similarly, again, you'll see where the integration between the coordinator view and the provider view will make some sense as we move through it. So if you were in your coordinator view, you would normally be looking at the alerts report, and you'd be watching anything that's due to expire within a 2-month window. So now I'm logging in as Kirk, and Kirk is also seeing here underneath his DEA that his DEA is due to expire. Similarly, again, within that, or has been expired within a certain time frame, that 2-month window. So again, the provider is leveraging similar alerts and similar functionality as you do when you come into the coordinator view. And just coming back again, so top navigation bar, just like you as a coordinator. For the provider, this is related to the provider logging in and the ability to sign out. The second navigation bar for you as a coordinator would normally be the team. For the provider, it's their personal dashboard. Their managed credentials will open up their record. We'll go there in a moment. you will not see, or your providers will not see these two options. The logins, again, just like you see logins on your coordinator view, these are the logins only related to Kirk. Right? And then task, again, these would be emails, the third-party email system used that a coordinator may have sent Kirk an actual task or an email per se. And again, their CME. Right? Their dashboard is the same for everybody. Again, you will not see these two areas down here. Kirk's picture, NPI number, his specialty, state licenses with expiration dates, his primary practice as it is an actual team membership he has, professional school, and obviously his DEA licenses as well. And again, similar to your alerts functionality, he has again an alert here about something that's due to expire or has expired within that 2-month window. All right. I click on the manage credentials. Again, I'm going to open up just like I would if I was a coordinator. So Kirk has a similar ability to come in now to the record. Again, that same format that you see as a coordinator. He can move through the actual blue manage credentials sections, and he can verify or update, if need be, the actual credentialing data. Right? And I'll come back to the experience of a new provider in a few minutes, but this is an existing provider. If you were to have them engage with the OneView platform, again, they would experience it as a portal, an online portal for credentialing. And they can move through, they could see the data you currently have in here, they could update it if they needed to, they can then verify what you have as well. So here's your practice employer relationships. Again, just like you see as a coordinator, the provider will see the same information. And again, same format, same layout, same credentialing record. Right. What's also kind of neat about the platform, again, if it's used as originally designed, honestly, it will allow the provider then, instead of you doing email exchanges or requesting information via email and having to come back in here and do updates and so on, if you spend the time, and it does take some time, it's change management, to educate your providers about the fact that you now have adopted Modio's OneView platform as your online credentialing system. And you, again, similar to what we went through with EMR. So when we went through the EMR adoption, again, this has been about 10 years or so now, it took as much as the technology and training on technology, it took the teams in those organizations a lot around change management, right? That's a process that it took us time to not only get the technology implemented and adopted, but again, helping to change behavior was as much a part of that process as the adoption of the technology itself. Similar to the credentialing solution, right? This is something else we've been doing really pretty much manually for as long as I can remember, both on paper and with people, right? Paper people processes. And again, something we typically did for the provider, and for the most part went in front of them really just simply for questions to be answered or updated and or signatures to be obtained, right? So now we're moving to this whole shift in their relationship where we're giving them more responsibility to be online, if that's your decision of your organization, and help to keep their record updated, and at a minimum to review it and let you know what changes need to be made, right? So again, that comes back to just, again, whether or not the organization wants to take that leap and make that shift in just how you manage credentialing and that relationship with your providers moving forward. Again, so coming back to the actual credentialing record, again, this is just for Dr. Heath. We actually use the CME for Kirk. So Kirk actually does keep his CME credits in here. He will update them as he's getting them done, and he helps to use them to keep track of his own CME credits requirements for both licenses that he carries. Similar like you can as a coordinator, the provider could upload or download documents. So you can take it as far as having the provider, instead of sending them to you via email as attachments or dropping them off in your office, they can upload documents directly right into the platform. Again, same process that you would do, again, where they just drag and drop, but again, they're coming straight into the platform. So when you think about the provider engaging in the system and again, going online and doing online management of their credentials, including their supporting documents, what you move from is really collecting and sourcing data and doing data entry and including uploading documents to more of a process of the provider doing that first piece. Then you come in behind them and you audit. what they've completed, what documents they're uploaded. Maybe you need to change the name of the document or where it's been placed. But again, you move more away from collecting and sourcing and data entry or uploading to really into an audit process, which just expedites the process quite a bit. Right? And so coming back again, same process here we would have. Let's come back to Kirk's dashboard. Again, I'm going to come to the login. So similar again, if we had logins in the actual credentialing, in our credentialing system for Kirk, right? Again, coming back to my coordinator view. Let's come back to my team for a minute. If I had logins here for Kirk Heath, I would show them here on Kirk's personal provider profile as well. Again, just to reiterate that, if I'm in my system as a coordinator and I've added logins on my team page here for Kirk, those logins will actually show when Kirk logs in on his provider portal, on his dashboard, you'll see those logins as well. Again, so that's again is between the two, coordinator view versus provider view. That's how the data is shared. All right. I'm going to come back to CME for a minute. Again, CME, this is with inside the record. Again, the provider, you could actually educate your provider on how to add CMEs, or at a minimum to upload their CME documents into the actual folder as well. So again, at the minimum, you can at least have them upload the documents when they go to a conference or you attend an actual CME qualified event. At least you'd have the uploaded documents, and then you could come here and key in the actual CMEs as well. So again, you can still simplify the CME process. Most organizations that I've talked to, that is one of the areas that most of us have to do a little bit of chasing around for providers to get that information from them. And normally it's part of our reappointment process, or potentially again, going back to do if they sit back for their boards or sit back for their license renewal. Okay, remember that CME, again, the logic in the system, it'll tell you by license here, again, how many CMEs they need to earn in the period of time. The question mark will tell you the state-specific requirements. So again, so for North Carolina, for an MD license, it's telling you as a user or the provider, they have to have 60 CME credits in 3 years. It also is telling them how they have to earn them, right? So again, they've got to have 3 credits in prescription controlled substances. Again, the cycle is, again, 3 years begins on their birth date. And these are the state requirements for CMEs for licensing. Right? And then down here again, where Virginia's a little bit different. And it's interesting to see how much this changes from state to state. Right? Over here, the system again, as Kirk is adding, or we're adding for him, his CME credits, it's actually keeping track or reconciling what he's required to earn against what he's actually earned. So at any given point, again, we can see on a snapshot, where is our provider in meeting the CME requirements in the current cycle they're in. All right, so again, CME, this is the requirements for that state license in detail underneath the question mark. Over here, again, this is actually based on what he's got completed so far. Right, so again, that is one area, again, when you think about rolling it out or potentially rolling it out, you know what I'd say as far as staging it with providers, if you can get them first to be comfortable logging in and coming in and seeing the system as a portal for credentialing with their, again, their dashboard, that's really your first set of adoption, where they come in, maybe they review their information and provide you with feedback on anything that might be different or updated. As they get more acclimated or more comfortable with the actual platform, you can start talking to them about actually maybe using the CME area. And again, it's much easier for them. If you talk to providers who use the CME function in the OneView platform, it ends up being much easier for them. And again, most of us have to chase them down. They've got to go back and pull out their CME credits. So it ends up being more of a timely process versus a reactive process based on, again, medical staff reappointments or board certifications or license renewals. Right. Now, I'm just going to pause for a second. Any questions around what we've seen so far?
We do have a question regarding verification documents, and I'm sorry, I'm not super clear on it. They're asking if providers have access to the verification documents.
They do. Yep. So I'm actually bunking back into Kirk's documents. I'm inside Kirk's record, right from his portal. And I'm coming right down into the document folder, just like you see as a coordinator. And they have access again to the actual documents here as well in all the different areas, including the verifications at the very bottom.
Thank you.
Mhm.
And we have one more question. How often do you update the CE requirements for each state?
That's a question we'll have to take away and come back to. You'll probably check in with product on that. I would imagine if there's any update to the actual state website we go out to, it'll happen that often, but we will verify that. Make sure we have an answer for you.
Thank you. And one last question, back to the verification documents. Can we block access to the verification documents?
Take a look at what settings you have down here.
I believe we can.
Yeah, I think so too. Let's look at them.
It's under permissions.
Yep, yep. Yep. So in the permissioning, and actually this is something we're going to expand on in our user guide. You can actually limit, one of the areas you can privilege in the platform is the document area, and it's actually through permissioning. So we're actually going to update that grid for you on how you would do that. But the answer is yes, you can. Yep. So right now, I'm going to clarify that on the support page, there is a tip guide around document management. And within that tip guide, it does define the different permissioning and what it actually does. We are going to expand on that a little bit further because it is somewhat team specific as well. But again, you can definitely control access to documents using the permission field here. Yeah, so do you want to add anything to that?
Thanks. So not related to documents, related to another question. If a provider updates their home address, will we get notified?
No. So that's one of the areas again. So right now, if they come in and make changes, there's nothing that notifies you that a change was made. And that's probably one of the areas we've given feedback to product around. So if changes were to happen, that would be some kind of notification to coordinators in the system. But the answer right now is no, you would not know that change was made.
That's it. Thank you so much.
Okay, good. Yeah. Coming back here again. So again, it truly is, I think, when we think about a coordinator, we're so embedded in our full team, all the features and functionality. And we talk a lot in our training sessions around, the provider experience. And I think that's why it was important today to come back here and talk about what the provider experience is, because it's so much simpler. And plus what's interesting is it was the original intention of how the system was created. Right. Just going to come back for a minute. Just going to log in again as myself here. I'm in here now as a coordinator. Again, this is a full view. We talk a little bit about task versus tracking. So again, we don't spend a lot of time on it in training because again, unless your providers are engaged, the task feature is not as beneficial as it is if your providers are engaged with the system. And what I mean by that is that, like I mentioned earlier with EMRs, it definitely takes some change management prior to sending anything out of the platform to a provider, and then ongoing due diligence to make sure if you're sending things that you're following up, that they're responding, right? Again, that's kind of the risk initially as you're adopting or rolling it out to your provider, your medical staff, is that they are not only are you doing it, but they are clearly responding and replying to what you send. So for example, if I'm a coordinator, this is you guys I'm sure are familiar with my demo team, most people, I can come into the task feature and I can send Kirk an actual task. Remember that the task feature is actually a third-party email system built into the platform. You can use it, again, for both among your team as coordinators, but where it could become beneficial when you think about tasks versus tracking. So all of our major workflows, right? Onboarding a new provider, getting involved with payer enrollment or recredentialing or revalidation or recredentialing for medical staff, we're normally going to have a tracking workflow that we're following through that methodical process, right? We're using tracking. Embedding and tracking is our ability to email out of the tracking feature as well to both coordinators and providers. When you have your providers engaged, two things actually open up. One is that you could now email your providers out of the tracking feature. So remember, inside the tracking feature, you can email another coordinator or provider. So if you run into a problem in an onboarding process where you're missing or have an outdated, for example, malpractice policy or malpractice COI, you could actually email the provider right from tracking. Again, this is totally dependent on them being engaged in the platform, and ask for the new COI. The other option is I can use the task feature, which again, we don't talk about very often in training unless your providers are engaged in the platform. So earlier today I came in, I just created this earlier, and I sent Kirk an actual task from my actual team here. All right, so we come down. I think I actually did it from privileging. Yep. So earlier again today, no, where did I do it from? Sorry, which team I was in. Yep, so earlier today I sent Kirk, I came in here and I created an actual task for Kirk. So I look at the actual name here and open it up. I actually sent him this task earlier today for our demo today. Now I'm going to come over again and act as Kirk. If Kirk comes along again across this navigation bar in this task, he now has an email from me, right? Again, this email is telling him that I understood he moved into a new home and at his earliest convenience would he send me his new home address, right? So again, now Kirk can come right back in here. Again, similar to email, it functions like an email, and he can reply right back to me here, and he can provide me with his home address, right? Whatever it might be. Right. So again, what's happening is that, remember, as we talk through training, the system, we always have the intention in the platform that for all the different types of workflows that you're doing, that we're able to keep you inside the platform. So instead of having to go out to a web browser and put in a website or go jump out to your work email account and have to email, you know, a coworker or a provider, that inside the platform, there's a solution or a touch point where you can do that. So this is another example where the task feature, if your providers are engaged, so something simple like a home address, you would not necessarily have a tracking report running for something as simple as a home address change, and the task feature could help you with that, right? So again, he can come back here and give me his new home address, and he would send me now an email from here, and he can also come in here and now mark it completed, right? And it's safe. All right, so again, when the providers are engaged, you'll find even more efficiencies in the platform once you can get them on board, right? Right, and I don't typically go through tasks too often in the training sessions, again, because it's very dependent on your providers being engaged in the platform and really having them adopt it as part of your normal workflow. Yasi, was there a question on task?
There is. So we have a, sorry, it says when we send out a task to a provider, will they get notified of this in their email or will they have to log into Modio to see the task?
Yep, great question. So similar to like you see in tracking, they will get an email to their work email account as well. So whatever email is attached to their user ID as a provider, they'll get an email into that account as well. Yep, great question. And that's again where the system is so good about that, right? We understand that not everybody's logged into the system, you know, all the time. Plus, not uncommon for providers to be doing things off hours. So again, whether it be a task or a tracking feature or an application, yes, there's also notification happening in the emails related to both the coordinator account and the provider's accounts.
Thanks, Sue. So essentially, they can see the actual task item within the email content. Is that correct?
Yep, they do. They actually have a hyperlink that allows them, again, they would have to click on the hyperlink and log in, but they will see the narrative about what basically what it's for, and they will have to log in to be able to respond. Yes.
That's it. Thank you.
Yep. Yep. So again, you can see, you know, I just want to make sure that I am acknowledging, from coming out of the industry and spending a long time with EMR adoption, it definitely takes some time. And one of the things that Yasi and I have done is we have created, we'll talk more about for a new provider, but we actually have some tools we've created, one of them being a video for new providers you can send out ahead of time. So again, the more you educate the provider ahead of time that you now have this online credentialing system, and that should they see anything come from Modio, if you're using the form feature for applications from DocuSign, that they know they need to respond and reply. You'll again be able to really realize more efficiencies in your workflow and move more away from manual processes for sure. But again, I don't want to acknowledge that it takes some time to get your providers onboarded and adopting the use of the platform for sure. Yasi, any questions?
No, thanks, Sue.
All right, so that's your what I would call your legacy providers. Those are your existing providers who are on your staff already. You already have credentialing records, again, probably built out during implementation. That typically is part of our data scripting process. Let's talk about a new provider coming in. One of the things that I hear often is that we usually train on onboarding, unless you tell me that you're not going to use it for your new providers coming in. But probably 9 times out of 10 now, we're going through training around that feature called the onboarding invitation. If I'm in my system as an actual coordinator, Again, it's on my team dashboard. Most of us are familiar with this envelope. And what it allows you to do is, if your process today is where you send a provider an email, again, this is during your hiring process and some kind of employment packet. Very often it might include an application or at a minimum a checklist of the type of documents that you need to complete their credentialing record, that now that process can be replaced again with an online process instead. So that feature again in the system is called the onboarding invitation. It can be activated or utilized from your team dashboard here using the actual envelope. Let me come back to my team. All right. And what's nice about this onboarding invitation is that part of the process of adopting it is that we can customize and work with you to customize your welcome email, as well as the actual second part of that feature, which is the application. So again, whatever the languaging is that aligns with what you do today, whether you send an actual application in your organization or a checklist of data that you know you need through supporting documents. The second part of that onboarding process is the actual, again, called a form in the feature, but for us in the industry, it's our application that we use during our hiring process, right? I'm not going to dive deeply into the onboarding setup, et cetera, today, because we've done training on that before. Plus, there is recorded training sessions on the onboarding feature under Modio U. But I do want to talk about that from a new provider perspective. All right, so again, so instead of you sending that provider the welcome email that you would send normally through your email account, your own work email account, and the, again, employment packet, you would come in here and you'd access what we call the onboarding invitation. Right? So again, similar here, if I was to send this out to a provider, it would have my welcome email in here. This has already been created as a template. Again, it's going to have the languaging in here that you would like to use to address a new provider. And again, what happens is that automatically at the bottom, when it's created, a link is embedded that allows the provider, invites the provider to actually log on and claim their profile. All right, so coming back from a viewpoint of the provider, this is considered their dashboard, and then we call that as their provider profile. So when we send the onboarding invite out, we're actually inviting them in to log in. The actual email that's already attached inside their actual credentialing record that you created. Remember, when you add a provider, the 4 key elements you have to add to have that provider on your roster is that provider's full name, their licensing level, their specialty, and again, a valid email address. It's this email address that you add here that will default in the onboarding invite. So when I send that invitation to a new provider, that email up here is coming right out of the credentialing record that I've created for that provider, right? So this is, again, already been set up and ties that provider to your team, right? It's that email address that's linking that provider to your actual organization. That makes sense? Let me try pause there for a minute. Any questions around that, Yasi? Okay. All right, so again, so when Kirk gets that invitation, again, it's going to be, we've seen this before, again, it's going to be the email. It looks like this. Normally in this process, when I work with organizations, we send you a template that we recommend that you use languaging similar to what you're seeing here. The provider receives that email in their work email account. So again, the email attached to that credentialing record is this email they get, again, comes from the Modio system. At the very bottom, there's that same link. So like when you became a new user, you had to log into that email link that I sent to you, or maybe Kelly sent it to you as well, and you had to create a password. So we already had your email attached to your name, but now you had to create a password. Provider does the same thing, only when they're logging in, what they're going to see again is the ability to claim their profile, and here's that dashboard. Right, so coming back again, they're seeing this. Whoops, sorry. They're seeing this, and they're going to actually now claim it by agreeing to the terms and conditions of the use of the system. Right, so again, they're seeing something very simple, very provider oriented, very meant to be, again, very user friendly, but again, from a provider perspective, different than us as coordinators. Right, when they go through that and they make sure they claim their profile, they add their new password, agree to the terms and conditions. And again, we've been to this, probably most of us have been to this before. This is what I call, again, in the system, we call it a form, but for all intents purposes, it is the application that we use when we actually are onboarding a new provider during our employment or recruiting process. And what's really cool about this, again, not to dive deep into the onboarding setup, remember that the onboarding invitation is totally customized per team, right? So again, so for your organization, we can go through here and you can take each one of these data fields and decide whether or not it's a data field you want exposed on your application that you use for your team, and if you want it required, right? So one of the things we can definitely do is make elements required. They cannot mark that process completed unless they have supplied you with every data element that has a star on that actual field. All right, so again, when they come in and they are complete that application, what's really cool about that process and what's really neat about this efficiency is when that provider is doing this application, again, in the system it's called a form, they are actually in your platform, completing their credentialing record real time. So you move away, again, I mentioned earlier, you're moving away from an email sent through your work email account with an application they may fill out and send back to you, or a list of documents, but now you've got to come into OneView and do data entry to build out their record. In contrast, what's happening here, that new provider, every time they add a field, they hit save and next, they're actually in your system building out their profile real time. So again, you move away from doing collection or sourcing of credentialing data and documents and data entry to really an audit process. Again, the provider's doing data entry, quote unquote, for you real time, instead of hand filling out an application, doing the application online, and then you move away from, again, data entry to doing an audit of the completed profile. Right, again, so coming back here, so again, you would come in, so if Kirk was in his managed credentials, all these fields have been completed, and I would move now from as a coordinator to come into Kirk's record, and I would audit his record from here, including his documents. And even if they upload documents, just to come back for a minute, even if they upload documents and they put them in the wrong area, again, I can still come down to that document area and I can still change. If Kirk put his, let's say, for example, he put his COI up here in the personal information, I can still come in here and change where that document is being placed. I can change where it actually is. Again, so even if there's concerns about the accuracy, if they upload or anything else, you still have the full capacity as a coordinator to come in here and move documents around, put them in the right place, the right type, and again, go through the audit process instead. Right. And then remembering that when you talk about an audit process, again, from the provider perspective, again, I'm in my dashboard, they have all this information. Their managed credentials is similar to what you see here, a little bit more limited as far as functionality. And then if I came back as a coordinator, I'm back on my team dashboard here. Remember, on my team dashboard, the envelope icon, which is how I access that feature, is changing as the provider moves through the process. So two things here is that it's a closed envelope. When it's been sent, the provider is not acknowledged that the invitation has been received. Once they have received it, it moves from a closed envelope to an open envelope. That means, again, they've actually accepted their profile or claimed their profile. The open circle means they actually went in and started to complete the application that we've customized for you. And then also when they've completed it, it changes to a dark circle with a check mark there as well. Also, to let you know a couple things of how we can help you with this process as well. On the completed profile, we can actually generate for you a single email to let either someone on your team know. Our best recommendation there is a group email, let you know when profiles have been completed. So again, we're hoping you're logging into the platform every day, like you log into your email system or your EMRs, your billing system, whatever they might be. But again, we are able to set up an email, a single email address, attach that completed profile status, that somebody in the organization will be notified when a profile has been completed. Right? We do recommend, again, just to underscore that, preferably to use a group email for your credentialing team or some of your credentialing team, again, just in case someone's out of the office. The other thing around onboarding, again, just to keep this process really efficient, is if you come into your reports, remember this is your report dropdown, there's actually a neat report here called completed items. Again, this is one of what we consider our web reports. It keeps track of what's happening in onboarding. So these are all my new invitations, ones that have been either never been sent or sent and not acknowledged by the provider. The ones that have been accepted, again, that means they've logged on and claimed their profile. The ones that have been logged on went into the actual application, again, called the form in OneView, and started to complete it but didn't finish it, as well as the ones that have been completed. And what's really nice about this, again, web view, is that if I come over here, you'll notice I can see all the documents that have been uploaded for the provider as well. I can see them here, right? What forms, again, these are providers that are active in our systems. They're not necessarily a good example, makes the incomplete profile. So again, you can see here, again, the documents that have been uploaded per provider. Again, and even if I've sent some tasks, they're here as well. Right, so again, we've got lots of ways to make sure we're making it as easy as possible for you to really leverage this feature in the system, and equally more important, to really get your providers to engage. Right. Yes, I'm just going to pause there. Any questions?
We do not have any.
Yes, any feedback or any input from, I know you're on the marketing and all the user guide side, that anything that I might have missed?
Nothing comes to mind
Okay.
right now, sorry.
You know, I just want to ask a question of all the users that are on the line with us today. Can you just raise your hand if you are using the onboarding invitation currently? If you just raise your hand, that'd be great. Right. And then we'll drop those hands, Yasi. And then anybody who's actually interested in, when we clear that out, and actually implementing the onboarding invitation so that you get your providers to engage. All right. Let me come back and offer you one other option here. So remember I mentioned earlier that this onboarding invitation is customized per team. So if you're an organization today that has one team, and the team, you're managing everything in one team, and or you have multiple teams, but no one team is actually defined as a team you're managing new providers coming in. And the reason why that's important is that when you think about sending out the invitation to new providers, the welcome email will be very different than you would send out to what I call your legacy providers, right? Your existing providers. One way we can help you with that is that we can offer to create what we call an onboarding team. So if this becomes something that you really want to push out to your legacy providers, your current medical staff, we recommend that you create an onboarding team. And the reason being, again, remember that I said that each team can have their own custom email template and actual application for the onboarding feature, right? And so again, for the onboarding team, the welcome email will be welcoming a new provider into your organization. For your existing team, right, this will have all of your full medical staff. That actual email will be, again, just introducing to your providers the fact that you now have an online credentialing portal for them to log into. And again, I want to make sure that I underscore, you should still do education prior to sending anything out of the OneView platform. So when they get that email from Odio, because they're system generated, that they do acknowledge and respond back to them. But that is something we can work with you to do if that makes sense. So again, just to clarify that, if you're considering trying to get your current medical staff engaged with your system, we recommend that maybe you set up an onboarding team to work with your new providers in the onboarding team, and then to invite your legacy providers into the use of the system, use your actual master team here. And again, you then can customize the email for your existing medical staff on the master team. And then you can create a welcome email for new providers on the onboarding team. And what I should have said earlier, and I apologize for not adding this earlier, when you send an onboarding invite out, again, the languaging inside the invite is called the form that you're using to customize to equal your, employment application or your recruiting application. Any data that's in the system already in the credentialing record will pre-populate on that. So you're never asking the provider for the same information twice. So when you think about your existing medical staff or legacy providers, what you're asking them for basically is to review the information you currently have on file and provide any information back to you or update them directly. And that's going to be up to you. All right. And if you're concerned about them making changes, we can talk a little bit about how to proactively get ready to audit in the system as well. But again, you can, just to come back and say from a workflow standpoint, we can differentiate your new providers and how you're managing them using the onboarding invitation versus your existing medical staff and using your master team. Questions?
No questions.
Yes, does that seem clear from a just description or
Yeah,
approach?
absolutely. And again, if you guys ever need more tip guides or feel like the ones that are up there are not helpful enough, feel free to give us feedback and we'll make them more custom to you.
Mhm. All right. All right. Either it's really clear or it's confusing. So hopefully it's clear, not confusing. But let me come back just for a workflow, on just something I can just offer you from workflows. If one of the concerns is that for existing providers, you're concerned that you're not notified when they change information, one of the items you could do, again, proactively, is that you can come into the record. Remember that inside the record, you have the ability to print out a complete summary of their information. So if one of the concerns is that you want to know if they change anything before they actually send it out, you could print this out and have it on file. Again, so it's not the most ideal thing. Ideally, we would be able to notify you. We're not there yet. But if that's one of the concerns or hesitations for using it and being able to hopefully leverage more efficiencies in the platform, you could, as just a level of security, print this out and have it on record, and then come over to the provider record and send out the onboarding invitation to your existing providers. So you would have how the record stood before you sent the invite out, and then you could do a comparison when you come back in to do your audit. Right? And then remember that, I think we've talked about this in most of the training sessions, we actually came in here, so right now in most situations, when you're in a record, each one of the managed credentials sections here is got a white check mark in it. If you're doing an audit, we add this little piece of functionality where if you were auditing the record, if you right click on it, let's say you went in here and you verified for Dr. Abil, everything is current and up to date and complete. All the data elements, when you look at these actual fields that you need for any application have been completed. Yep, personal information is done. If you right click it, you can then again come in here and change. Again, it's minor change, but it's a change on how it looks. So this is now saying, yep, this one's ready for application management, or this one's been verified or audited, and then work your way down. So we do have a workflow for you that we can describe around how you manage an audit. If that's, again, so if you move to, again, providers logging in and either reviewing existing information and or use it for new providers coming in or both, we can actually help you with a workflow around auditing a credentialing record. All right, so that's just simply a right click, and you can again verify which areas of the credentialing platform have been reviewed or audited and are ready for, again, application management or your next step in your credentialing process. No questions?
No, Sue.
Nope, there's one, there's two.
All right. So how do we create the onboarding invitation message?
All right, so I'm just going to come back from it. I said if we have some time today, I will go ahead and dive into that. But I also want to just encourage everybody to come up to the university. And there is, again, we have done prior trainings on the onboarding, both the setup and the use of the platform to do so. It's there to reinforce it as well. So again, the onboarding invitation, I'll go through this now if we have some time. What's a little bit awkward about this navigation is the fact that it's not necessarily intuitive, meaning that remember that the onboarding invitation is truly a team feature, right? So again, you set it up once per team. It's set up one time for both the email template and the application. You access the actual feature through any envelope on your team. So again, I can click it here. Again, I would have the ability, let me see, take them into a team that doesn't have one for a moment. Let's take it back. Got one in recruiting. Okay, so again, in the recruiting team, I don't have my onboarding invitation created yet. So I click on my envelope. Doesn't matter which provider I come into. Again, just have to always remember this is a team functionality, team feature that I set up once, regardless of where I access the feature. Right, so I come into the provider. I would come in here actually to the set up the template, click on the pencil. I would again copy and paste the actual welcome email here. Let me take a minute just to quickly pull this up. I can actually find this for you guys quick. Sorry, you're going to see my back end of my system here for a minute. So this is actually the welcome email we tend to send out. Hold it here. So again, I usually, again, if you're going to set up your system, I tend to come in here and send this copy to you. So this is what you would normally do. You can write into your system, but just copy and paste your actual email template in here, come back to my Word document. Again, it's this simple. You create it, and again, by default, the platform will embed that link in there, right? And I just copy and paste it here. Now I set it as my default template and hit save. And now again, my welcome email from my team, Modio Recruiting, has now got my template set up for, again, for welcoming a new provider into the actual Modio system. All right. Yasi, was there a question about that?
No, there isn't.
Okay, that's the first part. Again, just making sure I keep underscoring. It is a team feature, and we set it up on any provider. That's the first step. Then I'll come over to, again, I can use the same provider. It wouldn't matter. Let me just pause for a minute. If I come down to any provider here and click on the envelope, you're going to see here's that email I just copied in here, right? So now it is truly a template that I can use anytime I want to send the invite out to any provider. The one thing I want to caution about this is that when you actually, if you're going to use the onboarding invitation and you're going to send it to a provider, you want to always make sure you're choosing the providers from the bottom here, right? Do not make any changes to this gray field up here. Again, that is, those emails should be coming from your list, your roster down here, by simply clicking on the plus signs. All right, you're noticing if they're in red, those are not valid emails. So if you've got any kind of placeholders in your actual email address for your provider, they'll be in red down here. All right, but again, I simply click on the plus signs and I can add my providers. Please do not change or modify this gray area. You cannot add an email or modify an email here. And then you would hit send. You can send it out again to one or many providers all in this one workflow. If it's not per provider, you can do it again for more than one provider at the same time. Right? Then you come back again to the second, that's the actual email. And the feature is called the onboarding invitation, access through this actual envelope. The second part of it is, again, doesn't matter which provider I choose on a team, I'm setting up a team feature. I can come down all the way down to their summary again. This is again where I mentioned earlier, not necessarily intuitive. And you guys have full access to this. You have full access to set up the email template, to modify it, and to create this, again, called a form. But for us in the industry, this is our application. Let me come back for a minute. I think I moved a little quickly there. So I come into the provider's record, come down to the summary page, our infamous paper to pencil. Click here. If you were to send Dr. Aaron the onboarding invite today, this is the actual application out of the box. So again, it would pre-populate any information that's already in the record for him, and then he can come in here, he can complete the information. Remember that the gold star is required. Everything else is an open data field that he can hopefully complete, but he could mark the application completed without putting a data element in there. Right? They put their information in, hit save and next, and we'll move on. Education and training, etc. Again, really basic application. To customize it, I'm going to come 1 degree deeper. And again, all the coordinators have full access to this. I click on the form editor, and now in what we call a form viewer, but again, for us, this is our application. Now what we're actually doing is we're going to customize the application field by field. So again, for, let's say, for example, right now, first name and last name is obviously required elements in the platform, as well as their title. Let's scroll down to like the birth area, right? There's a lot of fields in the birth section, the credentialing record. Let's say, for example, the county was not necessary on your application. Right now it's exposed. I can click on it and I can uncheck this box. It's going to now hide the birth county. So meaning that if that when you send the application out, the birth county field would not be exposed in your application as an element that the provider has to supply or complete. Let's come back and say again, like the birth city doesn't matter. Again, I can come in here and I can just uncheck that box and hit save. Let's say that their citizenship is important and I have to have it. I come in here and I mark it required. Again, so I can go, now that field is required. That provider could not complete this application unless they actually filled out everything with a gold star. Right, so again, but you can customize this right down to the field level, whether the field is exposed on your application and or if it's required. Right, areas like CAQH, again, with the I with the line in it, again, very typical of the system. That means the CAQH area is now not exposed on the application. I simply click on the plus sign, open up the area or enable the area. And now I can come in here and decide what information on CAQH do I want from that provider. Most likely, only their ID number, right? We're talking about the provider. I can come in here and I can click on that pen to paper and hide the account status field. I can come in here and click on the paper and hide the paper to pencil and hide the account manager field. I may want to put here the ID number might be required in your application. I can mark it required. Right, but again, you'll see this is a large form because you can actually every field that the system can collect and store on your providers is going to be available to here if you decide whether or not you want it exposed on your application and or if it's required. I'm going to scroll down here a little bit quickly now because at the very bottom are the two other really important areas. The first one would be the logins area. Come all the way down. Yep, so I can ask providers for logins. I click on the plus sign. I open up the area of the application. I click on the plus sign again, and now I'm enabling what logins do I want to ask for. And so I can simply come in here. Let's just say we want their CAQH login. Maybe we're going to ask them for AMA, and whatever your normal would be here, come down to the AMA, and you make a list of what logins you would like that provider to provide you with, again, through the application process. I'm going to go ahead and hit save and make those changes. And then we come down, the very last thing is your document list, right? So I click on right now, again, the line is through the eye. So I click on the green plus sign to enable that section of my application. I'm going to click on the plus sign again to create my list. Now when I come down here, what you're going to see here when I hit add is the full list of document types that you can currently load into the platform. We want the CV, again, whatever that list might be. We're going to want a copy of their driver license, again, so on and so forth. I'm going to scroll down, get things that are more related to their malpractice COI. But again, that same document list that you may ask them for currently, through an email or however you're doing that, you can actually come in here now and create the list. The one thing that I'll share with you about the documents are not locked down as required elements because of the problems we hear back from our users around providers struggling to upload documents or not wanting to upload, right? So you can make the list, but we will not prevent them from completing their application if they have not uploaded all the documents. Right, but again, part of the audit process we can talk about, or I can walk you through, is how to make sure that all the documents you asked for have been added to the record. Right, so I'm going to stop there, Yasi, see if there's any questions.
Just one question. How did we get to the onboarding application page?
Yep, let me go back. Yep, let me come back here. And again, I'm just going to make sure that I acknowledge it's not intuitive, as user-friendly as the system is. What's funny about this one feature, and I can tell you how it happened actually, the onboarding invitation, both the email template and the creation of the application used to be managed by our support team. And I think about a year ago, they pushed it to the user interface, meaning that now you can manage it yourselves directly. And so it ended up here, again, not necessarily intuitive about where it is, but coming back to answer the question, the envelope is here, so the email template is right here. Then making sure that you click on your pencil, copy and paste your email in here, and then click on Save as Default and hit Save Again. That's your email. Any provider, doesn't matter in the team. Remember, this is a team feature you're setting up. Click on their name, come to the very, very bottom is a summary page. You'll notice in the upper right-hand corner, there's a pen to paper. That is the application that's there today. So if you were to send it today to the provider, this is the one that's out of the box that they would see. If you want to edit it or customize it, click on this link again, and now you can go field by field and make whatever change you want to make here. Make sure you're hitting save as you're making those changes, and then scrolling all the way down as well. And again, remember that if something is not exposed at all, that line with through the eye, just click on the plus sign. And sometimes there's a second area to enable as well. But again, just make sure you keep hitting the plus sign until you see the depth of whatever you need to open up there. Now, did that answer the question?
It did. And we do have a tip guide on this too, which gives a lot more description on what every single feature is within that onboarding.
Yep, so it's right here is your onboarding tip guide. And again, also we did do, I think they might have been back in September, we did do one of the university. Again, so here's the university link, as well as, again, by your name when you log in. Again, Yasi has been posting all of our historical training sessions that have been recorded here for your use. So if you scroll down here, We actually touched on it here in the new features, but then we did an actual dedicated onboarding training. That's number 203, course 203 as well. All right, so both your user guide is there as well as the recorded training session as well. And our time together today will be posted again on the university. Any other questions, Yasi?
I believe that's it.
Okay, and as always, again, I'm available. I think everybody has my email address. If you have any questions about setting it up, if you need that email template, let us know and we'll send that over to you as well. We can share that email template that I saw me pop up earlier in the Word document. Happy to share this with you to create your email for your onboarding invitation as well from there. And again, if you need anything in between now and getting yours set up, please reach out. We're happy to help. Okay. Yasi, any other questions?
No, that's it. Thanks, Sue, and everyone who joined.
Good. Thanks, everybody. Have a great day.